What is Juneteenth? I am so glad you asked. Juneteenth is a holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. Juneteenth was originally celebrated in Texas on June 19, 1866. It was marked the first anniversary of the day that African Americans there first learned of the Emancipation Proclamation, more than 2 years after it was initially issued. Juneteenth has significant history, meaning, and importance. Juneteenth history began during the Civil War in 1863. During the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared more than 3 million slaves living in the Confederate States to be free. This holiday, by some Christians, is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a celebration of the liberation of enslaved people in the Confederate States, having been enslaved as early as the 1600s and fighting vigorously for their freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation declared slaves in the Confederate States as free. More than 2 years would pass, however, before the news reached African Americans living in Texas. It was not until Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 19, in 1865 that the state's residency finally learned that slavery had been abolished. The former slaves immediately began to celebrate with prayer, feasting, song, and dance. Now that we have the history on Juneteenth, let's look at some meaning. The meaning of Juneteenth began in 1863 on Freedom's Eve, or the eve of January the 1st, 1863. The first night watch services took place. On that night, enslaved and free Americans gathered in churches and private homes across the country, awaiting news that the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect. At the stroke of midnight, prayers were answered, and all enslaved people in the Confederate States were declared legally free. Union soldiers, many whom were black, marched onto plantations and across cities in the South, reading small copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, spreading the news of freedom in Confederate States. Only through the 13th Amendment did emancipation end slavery throughout the United States. Juneteenth is an annual holiday observing the end of slavery in the United States and marks the day, June 19, 1865, when news of the emancipation reached people in the deepest parts of the former Confederacy in Galveston, Texas. In 2021, it became the first new federal holiday created by Congress in nearly 4 decades. Now that we have looked at the history and meaning of Juneteenth, let's look at the importance. Juneteenth is so important. It is to commemorate and be recognized as a national holiday. While it's a celebration of the end of slavery, it's an opportunity for everyone to reflect on race relations in the United States and how non-black folks can contribute to the progress toward anti-racist society. In 1872, 7 years after the announcement slavery was outlawed in the formerly Confederate States, a group of black ministers and businessmen raised enough money to purchase 10 acres of park in Texas. The land, now known as Emancipation Park, offered surrounding black communities a safe place they could celebrate Juneteenth. The holiday's resurgence has been underway since then. Responding to this new energy, in 1979, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday. Since then, 41 other states in the District of Columbia have recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday or holiday observance, including Rhode Island. Juneteenth celebrates the day black communities in Texas and now across the United States joyfully embraced their rights as Americans and declared their intentions to claim those rights, despite all opposition and obstacles, and they continue to do so today. I have given you the history, meaning, and importance of Juneteenth and why it is so important to African American people and their struggles throughout history when African Americans were enslaved. Yes, there is still so much work to do, which is exactly why it is so important to celebrate Juneteenth as a beautiful expression of hope and resistance.